And for more, we want to bring in Isaac Stone-Fish. He's a senior fellow at the Asia Society Center on U.S.-China Relations and a contributing writer at Foreign Policy magazine. Isaac, we have yet another American detained at the airport attempting to leave North Korea. Why are they detaining Americans? What's going on here?
It's a great question. A lot of times when they detain Americans, it's not only as a bargaining chip between Washington and Pyongyang, but because a lot of the Americans detained are actually working as so-called undercover missionaries, are trying to spread Christianity in North Korea, one of the world's least Christian countries. And Pyongyang doesn't want to have those missionaries able to operate freely there.
But at this point, considering the tension and the rhetoric that we're hearing, is it safe to assume that this is just another tactic, a way for Pyongyang to push back against America without setting off a missile?
And certainly with everything that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, they are going to use him as some sort of bargaining chip between the United States and Pyongyang, whether or not the State Department, U.S. government's going to send a high-ranking official like they've done in the past, whether or not they'll release him quickly or pretend to have him in Pyongyang for 15 years for a hard sentence. I mean, I think one thing that is comforting is that North Korea has never officially admitted the existence of gulags, so they're not going to send an American there to a place that they don't believe exists.
President Trump has some choices to make in the region. North Korea now threatening to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier in a single strike. If you were advising the president, what do you tell him?
It's a really important question. I think North Korea has said so many crazy things over the last couple of weeks, months, decades, that we can't take anything they say at anything remotely approaching face value. I mean, we just saw that they threatened to strike Australia with, with a weapon. They'll never do that. There's no scenario in which they would actually do that.
Why not? Why wouldn't they do that?
Australia is so far from an interest of North Korea, and it's so far away. They don't have the capability. They wouldn't want to get the capability to strike Australia. I mean, they're so much more focused on what's happening in South Korea, with Japan, with the United States. So I think being able to, Trump himself, someone who says so many things that aren't true, they have to understand that that's the way Pyongyang plays.
We've heard a bit about what the foreign policy plan is for North Korea, and one of the portions of it is that everything's on the table, essentially. But it still seems like China and pressuring China to influence North Korea is really at the centerpiece of all of this. But China's not doing anything, or it doesn't seem like China's doing anything. What can China do, and why isn't China doing as much as it can?
I think it's a great way to set it up. China can do so many things to push North Korea to act, to force regime change in North Korea if they so desired. The reason they don't want that is they're really afraid of instability in North Korea. They don't want to deal with the disintegration of the North Korean state, hundreds of thousands of starving Koreans fleeing into Northeast China. They don't want to deal with American troops on China's border in the event of a unified Korean peninsula. And the area where we really do hold common we have the same interest with China is on denuclearization of the peninsula. Neither China nor America wants nuclear weapons there. Besides that, there's so many different interests that it's really difficult to get Beijing to do what we want them to do.
They make it seem so simple, that China essentially provides, money and energy, and they could literally and figuratively pull the plug on North Korea. And what's a little instability, say, or the threat of instability? I know I've heard before that they're concerned about instability, but it seems like they would have enough of an influence to at least just threaten something, and they could move the needle in Pyongyang.
I think we have to remember that in the 90s, North Korea suffered a devastating famine. Probably millions of people died, and still that wasn't enough to push the Kims' hold from the country. So I think they're afraid that things would have to get so dire, it'd be such an awful humanitarian situation, and it still might not do what Beijing and the United States might want it to do.
So I think the takeaway, Isaac Stone-Fish, is that our president, President Trump, says a lot of things that maybe shouldn't be taken 100% on face value. Also true for the North Korean leader.
Indeed.
Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate it.
Isaac Stone-Fish, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.